The Nintendo Switch's online service is launching very soon, and the reception has been pretty lukewarm to say the least. A lot of people seem to be upset with the lack of features and things going on with Nintendo Switch's online service, and Nintendo has been feeling the backlash from consumers. I did a video talking about this situation yesterday on the channel, so make sure you guys check out that video after this video. But I think one thing we can all agree on about Nintendo Switch's online service is the NES service is pretty cool. You'll be able to play a variety of NES games, games that feature online multiplayer, games that utilize voice chat through that god-awful Switch voice chat app on your cell phone, and even the ability to use an NES-style controller on your Nintendo Switch. And I was looking over the list of games, and we are getting 20 games at the launch of the system, and the other games that will be coming out for the rest of 2018 have also been revealed, which we talk about in that video from yesterday on the channel. But I thought to myself, you know, there's a lot of games that I would like to see on the NES online service for the Nintendo Switch. So I made a list of 10 games that I would like to see on the NES service for the Nintendo Switch, and I think these games would be really good, really fun, and a welcome addition to the library. So today we're going to talk about those 10 games. Sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's jump into these 10 NES games I want to see on the Nintendo Switch.
Hey, RGT 85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my God, it's Stevie Richards!
So when going over my list of games, I realized there's really no rhyme or reason to this list. You know, some games are sports games, some games I definitely see as fun multiplayer experiences, and some games probably have little to no chance because of licensing issues, but I'm just going to sort of pretend licensing issues don't exist. I will, of course, mention it if I feel that a licensing issue is within a game, but really, this is just a good variety of games in my opinion. Fun games, fun multiplayer games, fun single-player games, and games that I feel would benefit from Nintendo Switch's online service. The first game I want to talk about is Super Spike Volleyball. Now, this game was a sports game released on the NES, and it's a volleyball game. It's nothing really special, doesn't really do anything super crazy. However, this game does support up to 4 players with an NES 4 score, so I think this would be a really fun game to play with a couple friends. Obviously, sports games, and especially NES-style sports games, can be very fun when you have a group of friends together, and it's a sort of arcadey-like experience. You are seeing Super Dodgeball come to the Nintendo Switch via the NES online service, so I think this would be another welcome addition to the library. It's a fun, simple sports game, it looks good, it plays decent enough, and I think people would really like it. Another game that I definitely want to see come to the service is, of course, Castlevania III. Castlevania III is an amazing game, one of the best NES games, and arguably one of the best Castlevania games of all time. Now, of course, there wouldn't be any real multiplayer component in this game, but Castlevania III has just an amazing adventure. There's hidden characters to unlock, there's really tight platforming, there's tons of crazy boss battles, really good graphics for the NES as well, and just a timeless game, one of the finest on the NES, and definitely a game that deserves a spot on the NES's library when it comes to the Nintendo Switch. Another game I want to see is Blades of Steel. Yes, we are getting ice hockey. Do you really need multiple hockey games on the NES online service? Yes, you do, because Blades of Steel, in my opinion, is a better game than ice hockey. Blades of Steel, of course, is a hockey game, but it's very fast-paced, very action-orientated, almost like a precursor to the NBA Jam style of games. It's very fast, it's very fun, there's fighting in the game as well, the graphics are good enough, and the gameplay is just really fast and really crisp. Blades of Steel is arguably my favorite sports title, maybe second to Tecmo Bowl on the NES, and I think would be a welcome addition to the NES's library, especially when you factor in the multiplayer aspect. Being able to talk trash to your friends online and playing this game online with multiplayer, I think would be super fun, and it's a super good game. Another game that definitely needs to be on this service that could be a little bit of a problem is Bomberman 2. Now, this is another game that utilizes the NES 4 score, which means that up to 4 players can play at once, and when you think of online games, you think of multiplayer games, and when you think of multiplayer games, up to 4 people is a pretty good number. Of course, Bomberman is a classic style of game. Bomberman 2 was definitely better than Bomberman 1 in my opinion, definitely a bit more refined, and definitely more like the standard Bomberman that we know and love today. Now, of course, this would have to go through Konami because of the Hudson Soft acquisition, but I don't think it would be too difficult to get Bomberman 2 for the NES on this NES online service, because I think this game would definitely do very well. Bomberman is a very popular franchise, Super Bomberman are sold really well on the Nintendo Switch, so I definitely think there would be a market for this. And once again, that multiplayer aspect with up to 4 people playing online together, and of course the trash talk would just be so much fun. It's a classic game, a game that definitely still holds up with timeless gameplay, and a game that I would love to see on the Nintendo Switch's online service. Arcade ports were very hit or miss on the NES, with most of them being misses, but a game that I think would do pretty well and would be pretty fun, especially with teaming up with a friend, would be Smash TV. Now, Smash TV, of course, was based on the arcade hit, and the NES version was definitely very limited in terms of what you could do. The Super Nintendo version was, of course, way better, but the NES version is still pretty fun, and the fact that you could play with up to 2 players simultaneously would just be really fun to go through and play this game online. I like a lot of online cooperative games. I like a lot of co-op experiences. I think that the Nintendo Switch's online stuff, especially with the NES stuff, will be stuff that you are playing with friends. And Smash TV is another great game to play with a friend. It looks pretty good. It plays decent enough. It's really a fun game, and a game that I think would do very well on Nintendo Switch's online service. This next game is probably the least likely to enter Nintendo Switch's online service via the NES, and honestly, it's a shame because it is such a fun 2-player game that I think so many people will love it, but because of licensing issues, it probably will not happen. That is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project. Definitely the crown jewel of the Ninja Turtles trilogy on the NES. A really fun game, a definitely arcade-style game, a really fast game, and it has all of your classic stuff, classic enemies, cool locations, but unfortunately, because of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles license, they'll probably will never see a release on the NES service, and that's a shame in my opinion. I hope Nintendo could potentially work out something, because that game would be an absolute blast to play online with friends with the 2-player simultaneous co-op. A really fun game, one of the best beat-em-ups on the system, and a game that definitely deserves a spot on the NES online service, but unfortunately, we probably won't see. This next game is a game that not a lot of people know about, but it's a game that I actually really like, and it's a game called Archon. Imagine chess with some sort of real-time elements and different characters based on like mythology and stuff like that, and that's pretty much what Archon is. It is a board game that has real-time battle elements, and it's based on which characters are battling each other, so it's really cool. You get some really interesting situations between different characters and stuff like that, and it's just a really unique and interesting game. An NES hidden gem in my opinion, a game that could potentially come to the platform, and I think would be really fun to play online with people, you know, just battling it out in this random weird world of chess that has real-time elements would be super fun. It's a very fun multiplayer game, and a game that I think would do really well. Ninja Gaiden is coming to Nintendo Switch's online service, but another game that's sort of in the style of Ninja Gaiden that I think would do really well is Shadow of the Ninja. Now, Shadow of the Ninja basically looks and sort of feels and plays like a Ninja Gaiden-like game, but the big difference that this game has versus Ninja Gaiden is the ability to play with 2-player simultaneous co-op, and that is a huge draw in my opinion. I think this game would be really fun. It's sort of an under-the-radar game that not a lot of people talk about, but it's a really solid game. It looks great, it sounds great, and I think would make another great addition to the NES's library. Shadow of the Ninja, I definitely would love to see that. Another game that would make absolute perfect sense on the NES's online service is, of course, Contra. If you don't know what Contra is, I don't know what to tell you because you've been living under a rock. Blast through enemies, 2-player simultaneous co-op, crazy boss battles, really fun power-ups when it comes to your weapons. It's an iconic game. It's a game that I think a lot of people expect to see on there, and the fact that it has 2-player simultaneous co-op would once again make another great multiplayer addition to the NES's library on the Nintendo Switch. So Contra, where are you at? It's time to show your head. And my final game that I would like to see on the NES library via the Nintendo Switch is a game that, in my opinion, is the best 2-player simultaneous co-op experience on the NES. I've played this game and beaten this game many of times with local friends, and I would like to be able to play this game with online friends, and that is Double Dragon 2. Now, Double Dragon 2 is, of course, the sequel to the original Double Dragon. They changed up the controls a little bit, they made the graphics a lot better, but the most important thing about the NES version of Double Dragon 2 is 2-player simultaneous co-op. It is a hell of a lot of fun to blast through this game with a friend. It looks a lot better than the original game. It plays a lot better, in my opinion, with the additional moves once you get used to the control scheme, and it's just a fantastic game. One of my favorite games on the NES, and definitely a game that needs to be on the collection. They are adding in the original Double Dragon, but I definitely want to see Double Dragon 2 added as well, as I think it would be one of the most played games on the NES's online service. Alright, and those are 10 NES games that I want to see on Nintendo Switch via the NES's online service. I think think I did a good variety of games. Some of these games are a bit random, but I like these games. I think these games would give a good variety to the system. Of course, there's so many NES games out there, you know, whether it's single player experiences, multiplayer experiences. I'm sure a lot of people are like, well, where's Battletoads on your list? So let me know in the comment section down below what games you want to see added, and maybe if you like any of the games that I talked about, let me know which games you think would be a good addition to the NES's online service. And as always, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Like I said, be sure to check out that video I uploaded recently talking about the backlash of Nintendo Switch's online service to see what's going on with that situation. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next video. Later.